Well, thank you all for being here tonight. As you may know, I am Salazar Della Porta, and we're going to be covering Chief Judge training. I have something I would like to start with. And because of that, I will start with it. So let me just jump back, I think.
I thought this meeting is about AI using AI.
No, that's tomorrow night, Satendra.
Oh,
So
I see.
you're for the 19th. So if you're welcome to stay or you're welcome
I
to
see.
go. But
Oh,
that is
okay.
tomorrow night.
Oh, okay. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll leave. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
So welcome to the fire. I'm the one with the liar. Feel it burning through your veins as we're walking through the flames, getting higher. So welcome to the fire. Welcome to the fire.
Well, that's Welcome to the Fire by Willie Echo. Not quite sure if you heard it all, but we lost Satendra. So this is about being a chief judge in a contest. A chief judge in an area contest, division contest, or district contest. Essentially, the responsibilities are pretty much the same. So what do you do as a chief judge? One, you need to be familiar with the contest rule book. Evaluation is on page 18 of the rule book, and international speech is on page 17. You have to be familiar with the contest scripts, the evaluation and international speech scripts, which we've put in, and we provide that as a resource in the resource link later on in the training. And you have to brief at the dry runs. There's a dry run with contestants. There's one with judges, ballot counters, timers, sergeant at arms. You have to let them know your portion of the eligibility and their responsibilities as it plays into it. You also select a tiebreaker judge, somebody that you brief privately. Now, they don't attend your judges training, your judges briefing. They're somebody known to you, someone you'll work with, and you brief them privately. You have to verify the eligibility of contestants and judges. You have to brief contest rules both at the contest and the dry runs. You compile the ballots and timer reports. You report the results to the contest chair, the announcing dignitary, and if there's somebody doing the winner's certificates. So let's look at that, and you handle protests and notify the disqualified contestant of a protest before the contest is over, preferably. And you also verify the announcement of the winners at the contest. So if the announcing official should announce them out of order, you interrupt and set them in the correct order. You destroy all ballots and tally forms after the contest. This is what we're going to cover. Are there any questions of that before we go forward? Okay. Be familiar with the contest rule book. Eligibility for everyone. Be a Toastmaster in good standing, of a club in good standing, which means 8 or more members. Their membership dues are current with the club, and the club is paid Toastmasters International. That's a Toastmaster in good standing, in a club in good standing. Every contestant must not have declared or cannot have declared the intent to run for a district or international office. Now, those offices are inclusive of division directors or the top 3 offices, or offices beyond for region and international. Member can't compete.
I have a question about that.
Yes, yeah.
So does that include division director?
Yes, I thought I said that, but if I didn't, it's good that you brought it out. Yeah.
Thanks.
Because we don't do a leadership committee review of area directors, we don't know them till later. So somebody could be thinking of being an area director, but they're not considered a district officer till later. So right now what we do is I intend to run for division or I intend to run for district office. Those are district officers.
Okay.
Thank you for asking that. Very good question. The member can't compete in another division speech contest. I put international here, but it's the same for evaluation. I just took it from the international, and as always, don't do good editing on all my stuff. But essentially, you can only compete for one club in one area and one division. Now, you can compete in all your clubs, by the way, but you can only go to one area and one division, even if you belong to multiple areas and multiple divisions in the same contest. So let me explain that a little bit more. If you're, for instance, Megan, you're in multiple areas. In one area, one club in one area, you could compete in evaluation. In one club in another area, you could complete an international speech. Perfectly okay. You just can't compete in the same contest in both areas.
Thank you for clarifying that. That would not have occurred to me, and I would have had a panic.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. But it's okay as long as it's not the same contest, and it often happens. You can't be a current district or international officer. So as we know, now we do know that area directors currently serving can compete. But somebody may become an area director later. We don't know that yet. They might compete and become an area director later. You can't be a current division director or top 3 offices or other appointed offices of the district. And you can't compete in the contest. Now, these are the rules that apply to everybody, and you can't be a candidate for district positions elected by the district for the term beginning the upcoming July 1st. Now, I want to point out, to me, that's not much different than at least the last 2 rules that we put here. But for some reason, TI added that rule this year because it must have come to light. Something had to happen. As we know, something happens and they say, oh, need to spell that out. So essentially, anybody running for office beginning July 1st is not eligible. This goes into the Toastmasters who are members of more than one club. They can compete at each club level. They may not, as we discussed, compete in more than one area division contest of the same type, even if they're in different divisions or districts. Different contests, absolutely, not a problem. Now that's the eligibility requirements for everyone, and it covers everything for evaluation. But as we know, international has a few additional rules. They have to earn certificates of completion in levels 1 and 2 of a path of the Toastmasters Pathways experience, or earned a Distinguished Toastmaster Award. Now, I took this directly from the contest rulebook because this is took them all from the contest rulebook, of course, but this is very different language. It's much more specific. You have to earn those certificates of completion levels 1 and 2 of a path in the Pathways Toastmaster experience, or earned a Distinguished Toastmaster Award. So that's for the International Speech Contest. And the exception of that, of course, is a club that's chartered less than 1 year before the club contest, and they're permitted to compete as long as they are chartered before the area contest. So if the area contest is 1 March and a club charters 15 February, those members can compete in the area contest. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so I understand that it's only the charter members of the newly chartered club. Excuse me. Has there been an issue where members who joined after it charted, did they get difficult trying to compete? I'm a little nervous about that.
Well, they're not a charter member.
I understand that they're not allowed, but has it been a problem where people tried to argue it?
Let me put it this way. I absolutely believe, I'm sure it was a problem somewhere, but I haven't had personal experience with that anywhere of that. And I think because the language is specific to charter, even though someone may argue it, even TI would stand on, no, charter member. You got to be there from the start.
Thank you.
Yeah. So you're welcome. And as you know, Megan, especially with your legal background, somebody will argue anything. So it doesn't. So, all right. So those are the eligibility rules, and essentially, you're the one as chief judge. You're kind of the guardian of the eligibility. So you also want, and we're going to touch more on the eligibility going forward, We're also going to be familiar with the contest scripts. We've redone the scripts. As a matter of fact, with each of these sessions every Thursday, I find myself updating the script. So the resources you get keep getting updated and they're more current. I don't believe they're on the district website yet, and if they are and district slaps my hand, so be it. But the resource link I'm going to give you has the most current material. Now, the contest scripts add a couple of things that you don't get from the rule book. One, they're going to add the contest flow. So you should be very familiar with that because the contest flow could potentially impact somebody protesting, even though it shouldn't, it could. Somebody could say they didn't do this at this time, I need to protest, and you need to know it doesn't really matter. But on top of that, the contest scripts for both evaluation and international have your briefing script that are specifically for briefing at the contest. Now you're also going to get, and they're at these contest resource thing, I thought I put it in there. Maybe I went to, no, I didn't. Okay. You're also going to get a chief judge briefing checklist for each contest, one for evaluation, one for international, that talks to you about all the other briefings you do. But we put the briefing script in the one place so that we're not maintaining it in multiple places. And that's how things start getting out of sync. So when you look at the contest script, look at your briefing section to see what you're briefing and why. One of the things I'm going to ask you to pay attention to, and I apologize that I didn't pull it up with that, is that it has a section of the script that says, if the Toastmaster has already briefed this, don't brief it again. And then the other thing I've got to say, please, 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 Chief Judges, brief the script as if you mean it. Don't be one of those chief judges that briefs, well, okay, we have to go through this right now. What do you do? Okay, the contestants are selected for eligibility. Brief it like you mean it. We're Toastmasters. You know, make it something with some feeling and some oomph. So please act like it's important because you're briefing the eligibility, you're briefing who can protest, you're briefing the timing lights and go through the demonstration of it. So you're briefing a lot of things that are actually really important to the function of the contest. Act as if it's important, please. Now, as far as judges go, at the club level, Toastmasters recommends no less than 5. Whether a club does that or not is not going to be that important. Oh, okay. Okay. Thanks, Megan. But at the area level, we also recommend no less than 5. So let's talk about that and division in the same context. Area should have 1 judge for every club in the area. But Toastmasters says has no less than 5. So you have several options. 1, you can get a judge from outside the area. You could also try to get 2 judges from each club in the area. If you have 4 clubs, you could see if you could get 2 judges from each club. Then you have 5 or more judges, which is fine. Very often, however, if you have a club who's not participating in the contest, often they don't really have people who participate to help the contest either. But the key thing is you have 2 options here is try to get 2 from every club to make sure you have 5 or more, or get judges from outside the area. Do not get 2 judges from one club, 1 judge from another club, and no judges from 2 more clubs. You're opening yourself up to a big Pandora's box of problems. Make sure for every club in the area, you have a judge. And if one club's not participating at all and doesn't send a judge, and you have 4 clubs, that means you've got 3 judges. You need to get 2 more from somewhere else, outside the area. Okay? Same thing with division. If a division only has, like Division A has 4 areas, they certainly need to get at least 1 judge from each area. However, they could also try to get 2 judges from each area. But there's a challenge with division that we've got to mention. It affects division and district. A judge in a division contest cannot be a member of a club that the contestant is a member of. Now, let's put that in another context. If you're a member of multiple clubs, then you have to look at contestant 1 is representing my club A. And that would mean I couldn't be a contestant, I couldn't be a judge in that contest. But what if contestant 1 is representing club A, which I'm not a member of, but is also a member of club B that I am a member of? I still can't be a judge. As long as I am in any club with that contestant, not just the competing club, any club, I can't be a judge in that contest. That's a challenge at the division level. You don't have to apply that at the area level, but at the division level, you do. You also have to do that at the district level. Now, at the district level, what we tend to do is we tend to go to each division and get 2 judges as a baseline starting point. We try to get more, but it has to be even. So if we can get 3 from A and B, but we can only get 1 from the other divisions, then we can only, or 2 from the other divisions, then we only go with 2. Same thing at division. You have 4 areas. You need to at least have 4 judges, 1 from each area. If you can get 2, that's good, but none of the judges can belong to any club that the contestant is in, not just the competing club. So hopefully I haven't beaten that to death, but it is clear. It's really important. It makes, at the division level, not at the district as much, but at the division level, it makes a significant challenge. So, ballot counters, you like to have 3, never less than 2, but 3. People sometimes say, oh, we can do it with just 1. No, have 3. Remember, you're the audit team. The chief judge and the ballot counters are auditing. You're collecting all those ballots, and you're making sure they're properly compiled. Now, we had a contest in Fall Fusion, which I wasn't involved with, but I was asked about it, and I kind of had a little bit of a fit. What happened was a contest was held, and in this case, Offie was named as the winner, let's say. And then after the contest was over, a notice went out to Offie and said, you know what? We tallied wrong. Megan should be the winner. Well, that's a no-no. You know, I don't really care if you tallied wrong. But the issue comes down to, and we'll talk about that in a little further, but the issue really comes down to, that's why 3 ballot counters are best. 1 reading off, 1 compiling, 1 looking, and the chief judge looking. So you're actually getting 2 verifications of what's being put into the tally sheet for the total tally. And those extra set of eyes help. I have never failed to find the extra set of eyes to be wasted. And it helps the tally go quicker. Ballot counter is also an area where somebody who has never done a contest function, it's a good way to break them in. They get to see the judging process, the chief judging process, and they become more familiar with the overall flow of the contest. At the area, division, and district level, you start looking for experience. At area, you might take somebody who's never been a judge before as a judge. Maybe they've been just to their club contest. But at division level, ideally you want to get somebody who's been an area judge. And at district level, ideally you want to get somebody who's been a division judge. You want to have somebody who's had the experience of knowing the distinction between judging and evaluating. Okay, any questions on those 2? Before we go to the third, which is timers. I've heard people say you don't need 2 timers. Well, those people have not been eating their Wheaties. You want 2 timers. You want 2 timers, not just for backup and technical failure. That's one issue. But you want 2 timers actually for time verification. I have a quick thumb or something, and I start maybe before they started. Or I have a slow thumb, and I did it after they started, and I say they're short. The other one says they're on time. Or I say they're long and the other one says they're on time. I want, as a chief judge, I want that verification. My intention is to always give the benefit to the contestant, not I'm not saying the timers are wrong, but if one says on time and one says overtime, I give the benefit to the contestant. One thing about the timers, though, if they're using their phone, they're fine. If they're using a manual timer, we want it to go down to tenths of a second. I was a chief judge at a district evaluation contest several years ago. One timer said she was over by 2 seconds. The other timer said she was on time, or tenths of a second, rather. She was over by tenths of a second. The other timer said she was on time. Well, I said, okay, she's on time. She's good to go. Turned out the other timer told me after thinking, my timer didn't go down past the actual second, so I think she went a little long. Yeah, it was a good evaluation. I'm not saying she shouldn't have won, but she shouldn't have won. It's like, so you want to make sure the timers have compatible timing devices. So if they go over by a tenth of a second, they're over. And we need to accommodate that. But if both do it, I give it. She's done or he's done. But that's why I want 2 timers. I want the validation of the time. The second thing is, especially in this Zoom environment, we do need to have backup. Something you want all your functionaries to do. You don't want them to be attending the contest on a phone. No phones. Laptops or desktops. Phones have more tendency to disrupt, to break off, Wi-Fi gets disconnected, or they can't do something effectively. So laptops or desktops for the functionaries. The other thing is we want the timers to do their timing backgrounds exactly the same. Only one is showing at a time, as Megan knows, and I'm sure Offie you know. Only one shows at a time. But the other one should be doing their timing and background at the same time. So if all of a sudden timer 1 says, I have a technical issue, they shut off their video and the other video comes up. And everybody is right where they should be. So make sure the timers understand they're both timing, they're both changing their backgrounds as they're timing. And can they be off by a tenth of a second or something? Yes. Again, I don't know if I would have I think it was 2 tenths of a second or 3 tenths of a second. I don't know what I would have done had both said she went over. But one said she was over, one said she wasn't. And so she got the benefit of the doubt. But the thing is, we really don't have to worry that much. We just want to make sure our timers have timing that's in sync. They both have the same backgrounds. In the resource folder you're going to get, we have the backgrounds that I personally recommend. That doesn't mean you're going to use them. I personally recommend the white background that says timer, not the black. The reason for that, to me, is very simple. If I turn my thing off, it's a speaker looking around might confuse me or confuse the timer with me until they hide video participants, or if they forget to hide video participants. So I prefer the white background that says I'm a timer, so it's very distinct. So that's the one in there. Also, the green, yellow, and red both have green, yellow, and red on them in case somebody does have a little bit of a color blindness, because certainly many more men than women do, I believe it's more men than women, have a little bit of color blindness, so the extra word kind of helps. Now, you're not responsible for this, but I'm going to share it with you because I think it goes to care of the contestants. What's recommended in the tech instructions, which are in that folder, and what's recommended in the scripts, which you're going through anyway, is that we spotlight the speaker. So for instance, I go ahead and I spotlight Megan. Offie is the timer. Now we spotlight Offie. So the timer is right there. We're not asking contestants to pin timers or anything else. Judges, of course, are counseled or told, don't pay attention to the timer. I don't care if he's red for 35 minutes. We're still evaluating Megan on her presentation, not evaluating, judging, not the time. But so when we put them like that, it's very clear to the speaker. It's easy for her to see or him to see. So we definitely recommend that. And I encourage you to kind of enforce that as best you can. It's in the script. It's in the Toastmaster instructions. But let me remove.
So who's doing that? Is that
The
the,
tech chair does that.
okay, thank you.
But I'm putting it in there for awareness. I'm mentioning it here for your awareness as you, oh, there it is up here, moved on. I'm putting it in here for your awareness so you can think about that, because that makes it more clear to the contestants, and it prevents some of the other technical issues we've had with, can you pin the timer? Certainly we've got in there, is the, tech chair spotlight the timer? Can you see the timer? Yes, I can see the timer. Okay. But it takes away that pin the timer information, or I can't see the timer, or where is the timer? So we just recommend that. And that's just for information. It's not, you don't enforce it, but I do ask that you kind of make sure your team, whatever team you're working with, understands that distinction. It really works well. The alternative, by the way, I'm just going to share this. The alternative is, as you know, if somebody raises their hand, they'll go to the automatic left side of the screen. So it didn't, oh, I was clapping. I'm not raising my hand. So did you see me move? Yeah. It's just by a hand raise. So let's say somebody says, I don't want my timer spotlighted. Timer needs to know, raise your hand. They'll go to that. So that way, even when they're minimized, they'll be up in the upper left corner. And here, I'll just do speaker view. Well, I don't want to do it. I'll spotlight Megan again, because if I speaker view, it'll be me. But so I'll be in the upper left corner and you can see me clearly. So those are just two things to clarify that we've definitely identified as ways to smooth out the process, less disruptive. So, and by the way, you will be getting a set of the slides too. The slides are already in the resource folder. I put them up in there. So all of this is yours for the one low price of free. That's not all. Now, of course, you do brief at the contestant dry run. Now, you don't brief it's the Toastmasters dry run. Really, the Toastmaster is running that. However, you should be there to talk to the contestants about protests. And we'll talk more about protests later. But you, as chief judge, should set up your protest process. And we're going to talk a little bit about that a little further too when we talk about communication. But the protest process is one that you set up, and you're going to brief the judges and the contestants, but ensure that it happens. Now, the contest rule book says contest chair gets protest. I say horse hockey. The protest has to come to the chief judge. I always tell my contest chair I take care of protests. I want it to come directly to me as chief judge. I'm not a voting judge. I don't get to vote on protests, but I have to call the judges in and I have to call the folks in. So we'll talk about protests a little later, but you need to be the point of contact and let the contestants know how to do it and what the criteria is for doing a protest, which we'll touch on a little bit too. So make sure you're at the contestant dry run. You also brief the functionary dry run. You are the god and goddess of the judges, the ballot counters, and the timers in terms of reporting the information, doing the judging and reporting the information, compiling the information, reporting it out. Why is the sergeant at arms here, do you think? I'll make it simple. We have an evaluation contest. We have a breakout room. We want to let the sergeant at arms know what to do with the contestants in the breakout room. Now, if you brief that with the sergeant at arms at the contestant dry run, they don't have to come to the other one. But for the evaluation contest, Gail, how are you? Thank you for joining us. For the evaluation contest, we want to make sure that, one, the sergeant at arms is in the breakout room with the contestants. They have 5 minutes to prepare their evaluation. They heard the test speaker. They're in the breakout room, and then they start the interview of the test speaker to fill up the time. At the end of the 5 minutes, the sergeant at arms asks them to show their hands. Now, unfortunately for the last contestant, they're going to be showing their hands for a long time, but they need to show their hands because in the physical contest, what we would do is collect their notes, but we're not in a physical contest. So we need to do something to make sure they're not still writing their evaluation. Are they thinking of their evaluation? Of course they are. Even in the physical contest, they are. There should be no communication in that room. There shouldn't be conversation going on. And the only communication should be when the tech chair says, send in the first contestant, or send in the next contestant, the second contestant, or send in the third. You know, the broadcast message comes in, contestant goes out. That should be the only communication in the room, and the hand should be visible so that nobody is writing or typing. So you want to make sure the sergeant at arms understands that piece. If you brief it at the contestant briefing, dry run, you don't need to have the sergeant at arms at your other one. But at your, any questions on that?
Yeah, yeah.
Good.
Does the sergeant at arms stay in the room while the contestant leaves, or does the SAA go and come back?
No, in this case, they should stay in the room. The script will actually point that out as well. What we want is we want the tech chair to just message the sergeant at arms in the room. That way, there's always someone in the room observing them. In a physical contest, we would actually have somebody in the room with them anyway. You know, the going back and forth, and it's really, while we have an honor system, we aren't all honorable. So it's...
Well, it's not just that. I was in a contest and the sergeant at arms wasn't in the room, and none of us knew that the person in front of me never showed. And so we're not talking. So
Yeah.
I didn't really even know that that person wasn't in the room. I had such a huge panic. I thought I missed my slot
Oh,
because the number before me was suddenly gone. I thought, how did that happen? But there was no sergeant at arms to ask.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's really good that you've done this change.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Thank you for that. And thank you for sharing that twist on it, because I've not experienced that. So that's good to know that experience for the contestant also, not a good one. Yeah, it would have concerned me as well. So you're at the dry run as the chief judge. The other thing that you are responsible for is how do you want your ballots collected? Now, there are multiple ways you can do this. I'm going to give you my preferred way, which doesn't have to be your way. I still prefer an email. I still prefer to send all of my judges an email the day before or the night before the contest with the contestants listed in speaking order on the email. And all I want them to do is send back to me a reply to that email after they've compiled their ballots that says, here's my first, here's my second, here's my third. That's all I want. I want it, and it comes back to me and the ballot counters. I ask my ballot counters to watch for it because I'm more watching the room even as we're collecting. I am looking, but they don't have to watch the room. I do. Because as chief judge, you're also responsible that nothing else is happening to disrupt the contest. You know, if something should happen or interrupt. So I like to make sure I have all those ballots. Now, we've done it two ways also. We've done where we've gone off to the breakout room and collected ballots that way. We've done where we've collected ballots in the room. I prefer to collect ballots in the room. Contest stops. Last contestant speaks, minute of silence, then silence until all ballots are collected. Then the chief judge and ballot counters leave the room. That's what I prefer. And I just am ticking off that I got Megan's, and I got Offie's, and I got, oh, we lost her. And I've got Offie's, and I've got everybody's ballots coming in to make sure we've got them. And then I report to the chief judge, the Toastmaster rather, Toastmaster, all ballots have been collected. Tech chair, please move the ballot counters and chief judge to the breakout room. Now, depending how the tech chair has set up the room, you might be able to go on your own. But I would still say, tech chair, please move them just in case there's an issue. So you're briefing that process to the judges and the ballot counters and the timers. I do the same thing with the timers. The day or night before the contest, I send them an email. All I want them to do is return the email with the times and to give me a U for under or an O for over if it occurs. They send me an email with the name, the times fit in. They just need to reply to the email and put the times in. They set it up to reply, put the times in as they go through. Give me an O, a U, give me a highlight, give me an underline, give me one that says, look at this time. That's all I want. And then send it back to me and the ballot counters. You're also going to be collecting another ballot, but it's just you, not the ballot counters. That's your tiebreaker. And we're going to talk about the tiebreaker in a little bit. But that one you have yourself in case there's a tie. So that's what I brief at the functionary dry run. For the tech chair, if there's anything I need to brief, the tech chair can either be briefed after the contestant dry run on the same Zoom or day or place, or they can come to this meeting and I'll brief them separately. I also try to brief those that need to be there the least first, like the tech chair. I'd brief them first, then go into judges, ballot counters, and timers. Actually, then I would go to timers next, ballot counters and judges. So that's it. For me, the process is similar. I do it through email. Now, we're also providing to you links to 2 online ballots that you can use that Raji has prepared. And those will be in the resource list. And you could copy those over to your own directory and use them for your judges if you choose, and produce a report that way. But the other thing that we have in there, and I think, oh, here, let's talk to tiebreak judge. So before we go forward to the tiebreak judge, any questions on that so far? Tiebreak judge, you select. You know, if you can't think of anybody, find anybody or something else, yeah, ask the contest chair. But for the most part, you really want somebody known only to you. You really want to keep them, and you brief them privately. They do not attend the dry run. The other part to keep in mind is they are not a voting judge. That's important to know because if there's a protest, tiebreak judge is not a part of it. They're not part of the discussion. They're not part of any movement to the breakout room. They're not part of any of that. They're just a person sitting there giving you a list of every contestant in the order they think they spoke, how well they did, who's first, who's second, who's third, who's fourth, who's fifth, who's sixth. They list everybody. I'll talk about the use of the tiebreak ballot when we get to the tally sheet, in case you've never done that before. Then you also, what you do is verify eligibility of your contestants. You'll get these forms. Generally, they're sent out by the Toastmaster to the contestants. However, based on timing of putting together functionaries for your contest, they might be sent out by the contest chair. Contestant forms are not sent out by the chief judge, but you want their Form 1183. You want to verify their eligibility. In the briefing rules for the Toastmaster and the contest chair, you're going to find, we didn't put it in the chief judge, you're going to find the link to the eligibility checker on Toastmasters International, where you can go in there, put in a name, and they can tell you which contest, and they tell you whether they're eligible or not. Sometimes the contest chair will do that. If they do, I ask them to give me the list, not just tell me everybody's eligible. I want to know that they checked this one, this one, this one, and this one. And Megan, you might remember a couple of years ago, there was a woman up in the Aptos area who actually she's out of Scotts Valley. She actually had been a competent Toastmaster when you could still be a competent Toastmaster for international years ago. But Toastmaster International had no records of it. So they had changed over their data system and there were no records and she couldn't verify it. And and everybody went through this whole horrendous thing of should she be eligible at the division contest? And the issue is, personally, I hate to say this because you know me, I'm kind of harsh, is that I don't think she should have been. We couldn't verify her eligibility. I'm not trying to doubt her word, but we couldn't verify her eligibility. TI couldn't verify it. She had no certificate. She had nothing to prove it, just her word. That's it. But at the same token, we don't have to worry about that anymore. But it's really important that eligibility be verified. If she went to district, which she didn't, I don't know what district would have done because I don't think district would have taken her. And that's the unfortunate part. We couldn't verify her eligibility. It's that simple.
Well, I think you make a good point. We don't want to set up a contestant to promote to a level where they cannot compete. It's like, that's not fair to anybody. So,
And
yeah.
wonderfully so, you have just actually mentioned a rule that's actually in the rule book. We're not supposed to promote a contestant that may not be eligible at the next level. So it was decided to let her compete at the division level, but fortunately she didn't go forward. And I think in some people's minds, that was an underlying consideration, but you know what? You never know. So I think I can. But you also verify the eligibility of your judges. They fill out a judge's certification of eligibility and code of ethics. And we'll look briefly at that right now. So this is where the contestants fill out their eligibility and what they're attesting to. All those rules we said earlier. They're not an officer. They're not running for office. They're not a judge. They're not anything else. And so they're not a voting judge, tiebreaker, chief judge. They're not a timer, sergeant at arms. People are always asking, can a contestant be a functionary? Well, I use the same rule. For instance, let's say Offie is competing in the evaluation contest. Well, I could potentially use him as a judge in the international speech contest. It's not the same contest. So I use the same application if necessary. And that comes into play more at the area and division level than it does at district. At district, we have a larger pool to pull from. So it helps. So every contestant must fill this out. Below this portion, which I didn't include on the slide, of course, is the section about originality. We literally had a contestant in a contest, I think it's 4 years ago, made it all the way to the semifinals. It was Fall Fusion when a protest was raised. And the protest was that it wasn't an original speech. So he cleared his club, he cleared his quarterfinal, he got to the semifinals, and his speech was on the internet as someone else's speech, word for word,
And they signed a form saying it was their original work?
They signed it twice.
Oh my God.
Now, in fairness to the individual, when brought before the judges, he just admitted it.
Wow.
but it's like, I have no idea, but it was verbatim. It wasn't even like I took a speech idea from you and turned it into my own and said, no, it's mine. But a great idea I got from Megan, word for word. It was verbatim. And it was a funny speech, but it was verbatim. So, yeah. So, definitely you want the eligibility and you want to verify it. If your contest chair wants to verify it, that's fine. But it's between you and the contest chair, not the Toastmaster. Here's the judge's certification of eligibility and code of ethics, and it still bothers me a little bit. Now, notice if you have a judge in 2 contests, they're going to have to give you 2 forms. There's no way to complete this form for both. However, if you told a judge, now look away because I know the gods are looking at me. If you told the judge to just mark it for both and send it to you, and you're happy with that, I would never know. But technically, we're supposed to keep forwarding things forward, whether it's the contestant's form or the judge's form. It never happens. Every level, you're going to have to fill out the form again anyway, so I wouldn't worry about it. Do what makes sense for your contest. But whoops, I didn't mean to do that. I actually meant to. I want to point out that they still have here for judges, and this is the current one, which means they haven't updated it, have completed a minimum of 6 speeches at the Competent Communication Manual, or earned certificates of completion in level 1 and 2 of any path. But my recommendation is, as much as possible, levels 1 and 2 of any path, or higher than a CC, like maybe somebody who's an advanced communicator and didn't maybe hasn't completed level 1 and 2, but certainly DTMs level 1 and 2 are comparable to what the contestants have to do. The 6 speeches are a leftover. They just haven't updated the form. That's my opinion, and they didn't ask what my opinion was. So, and as you can see, it even has advanced Toastmaster bronze, advanced communicator bronze for at the semifinal level and international. So I would say go for your ATMs if you still have some around. Go for your DTMs and go for your level 1 and 2. So, any questions on that? And that is the form. We don't. So if somebody comes in with 6 speeches from the Competent Communicator Manual, you want to use them as a judge, go for it. But I'd like to know why by now they don't have a level 1 and 2 of any path. Have you been sleeping? Now, of course, another thing you do, as we mentioned briefly, was you brief the contest rules. This shows you there's a folder up in the resource thing called Chief Judge Briefings. It has the Evaluation Speech Contest Chief Judge Briefing and International Speech Contest Chief Judge Briefing. In the past, we tended to put these things together. This year I spoke to Raji, even though it's inconvenient for some, is that we keep them separate so that we don't have to keep updating them if they don't need to be updated. If we keep compiling them together, we have to update it every year. We just want to keep the information current, not necessarily the document itself. It has to change format. So it gives your duties, the duties of the functionaries so you know what to brief them, the duties of how you want to handle things at the contest. It talks about ballots. It talks about timing. It talks about a significant amount of information. What these don't have is, it doesn't have what's in the contest script for what you brief at the contest. Get that out of the contest script. And the reason we don't have it here, again, as I said, is we were updating it in multiple places. So when you updated a contest script, you had to update this briefing. It doesn't need to be there. This is, what do you tell your functionaries? What do you tell your team? How do you want to manage it? You compile the ballots, and did that make sense before I go forward? Because I do go fast. We also compile the ballots and timers reports. These are the TI forms. As I told you, I tend to use, for the timers, I tend to use an email where I just say, here's the speaker, fill in the time, just hit, all they have to do is I give them instructions. Hit reply, don't reply yet, don't send it, put in the times. When you're all done, tell me over and under, and then hit send. And I get it. That's it. And so far, that's worked very well for me. It works with my style. But this is also, and I think, Megan, you're familiar with this. This is the tally sheet. This was actually developed by Diane Bear for our first division online contest in 2020. And we've been using it at the district level ever since. It's set up with 2 tabs in there, one for evaluation, one for international. You list all your judges here. You list your contestants, and I always list them by alphabetical order, not by speaking order. When you're compiling, speaking order doesn't matter anymore. You want to be able to find that name. So here I've got one ballot counter looking at the email that came from Megan. And Megan said John Doe was her number one. So I'll go in here and I'll give John Doe 3 points. Because as you can see here, first place is 3 points, second place is 2 points, third place is 1 point. So we get all the judges' votes going across for the judges for each contestant they voted on. And this automatically tallies the totals down here. Excuse me. Now this is where I always fill in the information. I have the cell phones of every one of my judges. I have the emails of every one of my judges. If I have missed a ballot from someone and I don't find my judge on the participant list in the Zoom, we're going to go to the breakout room and I'm going to call them. Maybe they lost connection. Maybe they've dropped off. And at that point too, once I'm in the breakout room, I don't want their ballot anymore, because now we're trying to keep everything moving forward. It's actually happened to me that I had a judge drop off the end of the world, and I called, not really, they lost their connection and stuff, but I called them.
I was thinking, Solazar, you're not a flat earther.
Yeah, I know. True. But what happened is they disappeared. I said, we're going on without her. I called her, said, we're going on without you. Don't worry about getting that ballot in. It's too late. And we moved on so that we didn't keep stalling the contest for her to get connected back in. And actually, she didn't get connected back in until we actually had tallied that contest. And at that point, didn't matter to me, and there were no reasons why that extra ballot would have, it might have changed something, but there was no reason why we had to have it. Now, this is where the tiebreaker comes in that has sometimes confused people. So a tiebreaker ballot, unlike a regular ballot, has lines down below. A regular ballot has a portion underneath the judging criteria that says first, second, and third. Tiebreaker ballot has about 10 blocks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because they're supposed to tally everybody in order. Every contestant that spoke. So if you have 6 contestants, they should have them listed from 1 to 6 on their form. So if I have a tie between 2 contestants, all I'm looking for is the first name on the tiebreaker ballot. That's all I'm looking for. I'm not looking to add points or do anything else. Megan and Offie are tied. Tiebreaker says Megan. Megan has now become number 1. Now I look at Offie. Offie may now be number 2 with no tie to the previous number 2. Then we go 2, and then 3 is done, and we go off to the races. If Offie suddenly becomes tied with number 2, now I'm looking for where's Offie or the other contestant on the tiebreaker. The first one you hit is the winner of that tie. That's all it is. That's the only thing we do with the tiebreaker ballot. So is that clear? Because some people get confused and they say, how do we do points? You don't do points. It's just break the tie. That's it. First in the list. Now, I don't distribute this to anybody, this tally sheet. And you can see there's also one here for international. It has the thing up here. If there's a red where we have a disqualifying time, I'll put that in here so I know that to go back to. I have my ballot counter information here and their cell phones. Whoops. Timers and their cell phones. And so I have complete contact with my folks. I give my cell phone number to every one of these people. And if I need to communicate with them, I'll text. I'm not going to call them. Like I said, I called that judge because she disappeared from the contest. Called her. But I'm going to text back and forth. And I ask them to keep their phones handy so they can see a text, or if it vibrates, they can hear it. Certainly don't want it to ring. Let's talk about, well, communication is going to be coming up. I'm going to wait. I tend to get ahead of myself because my mind starts flowing to the next thing. I apologize for that. So this ballot, this sheet is also provided in the contest resources. You could put it on your own drive and use it any way you want, or not use it. However, I found this completely extraordinarily functional. I have one ballot counter reading off what the judge reported first, and I have them do it slow, first, second, third. I have another ballot counter observing. I have another ballot counter putting it into the spreadsheet, and I'm also observing over the shoulder. And I find that that works really well, which is why I like 3 ballot counters. I can do it with 2. You can't do it with less than that. Does that make sense? Okay. You also have to report results. This is where we get into text, email, and WhatsApp. I don't mind WhatsApp, but I'm not a fan of WhatsApp for contests. No, I don't want to be communicating back and forth in WhatsApp. I really don't. I'd rather have text, and as I told you what I'd like to do with email. So what I'm going to do is a couple of things for me when I'm chief judge. I told you how I send the email out to the judges with speaking order, so they know it. They can do, it's just the email. They should be using their own handwritten ballot to do their judging and stuff like that, making all their annotations, all their notes, because I don't need any of that. All I need as chief judge are their top 3 in the order. And I want them first, second, and third. I actually had one judge one time sent it with what he thought the points were. and he had them wrong. So like we're looking at this, and it said, you know, what he's putting here doesn't make sense. So contacted him by text, and I said, are you trying to send us the points? And he said, oh, yeah. No, who's your first? Second, who's your third? So I try to make sure in my briefing they understand that. But then if I need follow-up communication, I'm going to text back and forth as much as possible. Also, I prefer to text the announcing official, the contest chair, and if there's somebody doing winner certificates, I'll text to them so they can do that quickly. I'm going to tell you what I do. Maybe what I just told you is what I've done, but I'm going to tell you what I do. The last several contests where I was chief judge, I prepared a first, second, and third place contest certificate for every contestant. Since they're electronic, I just had a folder that had that contestant's name. When I saw that contestant A came out third, I went to their folder, I pulled that certificate and put it into another directory. Same thing with the next one, who's second, same thing with first. And then I sent those certificates off to the contest chair, the announcing dignitary, and the tech chair. Nobody else had to do anything. It was all pre-done. So since they're all electronic, we're not actually printing things or doing things. All I was really doing was making documents, having them ready with everybody's name. And once I saw the results, I was able to forward those right away, and it saves time. You know, and there's no intermediary. So I took that as my responsibility, which it really wasn't, but I took it as something that I should do because I have the results. You know, now on the other side, if somebody asked me to do the winner certificate at the contest, no, that's not my job. You know, that's a totally different thing. But to actually prep that and do it in advance, and I briefed it in the contest chair as well as the how to do area and division contest. So you may find or encounter that depending on who you're working with. You may encounter that issue. It's just a very effective way of having them available. And the contest chair may want to have them. The contest chair may want to get the results and pull the certificates from their directories, and that's fine. Whoever does it. But since we're electronic and we're online, I say do it. Save some time, save some energy. So use the modality that works best for you and your team. I still find that email and text works the most direct and has the least confusion. So I would take all those cell phone numbers and I would put them in my contact list. And I would also create groups. I would have my judges group, my ballot counters group, my contest awards group, things like that. and I would put in my results and pop it off to my group, and I was done. So I encourage that. Simplify it whatever way you want. And if you want to do that in WhatsApp, do it in WhatsApp. I'm just not overly infatuated with WhatsApp. Not against it, but not for me. So what do besides attend this session and listen to me ramble? Well, you download speech contest packets, except, that's not all. We've got them in there for you. We've got this in that contest resource thing. But you are welcome to go download your own and do whatever you'd like. These are going to be the links for that, of course. But it's all found here in the D101 contest resources directory that you go to. All the forms, all the briefing. And I want to be clear, you are going to find some stuff from Tall Tales from last year. I left it there so I can update them. They're not current now and you don't need them now. You're dealing with evaluation and international, and those are all current, all that information. So if you come across a Tall Tales thing and said, oh, he lied to me, this says 2023. You're right, it says 2023. It's not updated yet. So, and this is what you're going to get in there in terms of the directories. You have certificates. You have chief judge and judge forms, chief judge briefing documents that we talked about. You have club contest specific information. A club email, which is an email that can be used for area contests to kind of notify clubs about the upcoming area contest. The contest planning spreadsheet, which is used by the contest chair for planning. Guidelines on organizing a contest. Protocol list, which is the protocol done at the beginning for the dignitaries are there. It gives the order of the dignitaries that you would announce if they're present. If they're not present, you don't need to announce them. Results and notification forms. Now, sometimes someone will say, well, the chief judge needs to send the notifications to the next level. And I would like to say, that's a nice thing to say, but it's the contest chair's job. But if you don't want to arm wrestle over it, the forms are there. What you want to do is make sure, if you should get stuck with that, but make sure the contest chair knows, get the information from the contestants before they're gone. It needs their phone number, it needs their email address, probably have the email address, maybe the Toastmaster has the phone number. It's something we do capture in the contest planning spreadsheet. So if you've got that information, you're good to go. It has a copy of the most current rule book, which is the one you saw there. A sample program, which was actually a program done for a multiple area event. The scripts, the 2 scripts, the speaker forms, tech guidelines is put out by Carrie Lynn Morgan, timer and ballot counter forms, timer backgrounds, which are the ones I mentioned, Toastmaster briefing checklist for the Toastmasters to use when they're briefing at their dry runs, and the training slides, which are the slides of each of the trainings that have been done so far. So we did club contest, we did area and division contest prep, we did contest chair, and of course we've just done chief judge. And there'll be one on judges and functionaries next week, or not next week, I think 2 weeks. I'll have to check, 2 weeks. And then something else. There's another one I'm doing. But here's some of the forms that are included. I won't go through all of them, but there's a lot of information here. All I can say is, I believe we've provided you enough resources to give you the opportunity to develop and flesh out your own contest and serve well as a contest chief judge. So any additional questions? Yes, ma'am.
Can you please post the link to that folder?
I'm actually copying that right now to put into the chat.
Thank you.
You're right on target with every question tonight, Megan. Oh, it's the wrong one. Come on, come on. Copy link. There we go.
Thank you.
And if you have any comments, any questions, or any concerns, please let Raji know. And so, and boy, I'm so grateful that both of you were here tonight. I knew I was going to record it anyway, but I just wasn't looking at the fun of recording with no one else there. So if you give me a moment, I want to conclude and just stop. So Megan just asked a question that we didn't cover during the course of the Chief Judge training, but it is on the Chief Judge. So I'll repeat it. Would you like to repeat it, Megan?
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, Megan essentially asked, if a contestant shows up late, who's responsible? And it really is on the Chief Judge because it's going to come down to eligibility at that point. Here's the thing to keep in mind. When we do these contests, we are actually doing 2 contests in one event. So we're doing an evaluation contest and we're doing an international speech contest. The rule is that the contestant must be present before the contest starts. That's not the event. So if we're starting our event at 9 a.m. and we're going to give rules from the Sergeant at Arms, we're going to introduce our area director or division director or other, and then we're going to do a contest chair, and one of the 2 of them are going to do dignitaries in the room, and then we introduce the contest Toastmaster. At the moment the contest Toastmaster starts, the evaluation contest has started. If the contestant shows up in that intervening time, they're still eligible. What I've done when that's happened, and it has happened, is that the contest Toastmaster starts, says hello, welcome, whatever they say. I'll say, point of order, Mr. Contest Toastmaster. This is the Chief Judge. So-and-so is disqualified from the competition. And then we go forward.
Oh, so you say that before if someone isn't in the room, you interrupt the Toastmaster to say, point of order,
Yes,
the person who's not here is disqualified.
yes.
That's a
Because
good
that
practice.
contest has started. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was saying that's a good practice because then it's clear and everyone in the room knows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. One other thing I didn't mention, and this came to mind with this. Now, at the end of the contest, if you know, we do time disqualifications before announcing winners. I want to point out, the only disqualification we announce is a time disqualification. If there's a protest and someone's disqualified, we don't eliminate them. We don't mention that there was a disqualification. If this happened just as we did right now with this contestant, we don't mention that again. It's already been mentioned. I also didn't mention protests. I did mention it, but I want to stress this. I have the protest sent to me by private chat. Just tell me there's a protest. Don't need to know what it is. I convened the judges into the breakout room after the last contestant to discuss the protest. Otherwise, we can't continue the contest. So we'll do it after the last contestant speaks. We just go off there. At that time, if Offie is protesting, I bring him in to say, what is your protest? Offie says, oh, Solazar spoke and he didn't attribute his quote to Mark Twain. And I know that's a Mark Twain quote. Thank you, Offie. Offie returns to the contest. I'll now notify the tech chair, Sergeant at Arms, to have Solazar come into the room, say, Solazar, we've received a protest that you quoted Mark Twain and you didn't. Oh, yeah, I did that. Oh, okay, thank you. Now Solazar returns to the room. Now the judges vote. Chief Judge doesn't vote. Tiebreak judge is not there, they don't vote. Ballot counters, they don't vote. Just the judges, they decide whether there's a disqualification or not. At that point, everything else continues. If you're collecting ballots, you collect them, whatever else you're doing. I'll notify the contest chair if the protest was upheld and so-and-so is disqualified, but it's up to the chief judge to notify that contestant. The contest chair may say they want to do it, and again, I'm not going to fight over things, but I prefer to let them know because I'd like to let them know what rule was violated so that they're clear for the next time. So thank you, Megan, for asking that question so I could also go over that in more detail as well, even though that wasn't part of it. So anything else from either of you?
No, that was helpful. Thank you.